Thank you very much. Bitcoin Treasury companies are an absolute phenomenon that have taken over, I don't know, probably last year or so after MicroStrategy had 4 years as the only one. But I find these an absolute fascinating new industry, really. All these guys are, well in the weeds of it, but from an observer, I just love them. I think it's an admission that there's no better thing a business can do to grow its share price than buy Bitcoin. What do you think?
Well, I started it as a Bitcoin treasury as a private business. So at the time, we were increasing our Bitcoin per share as a private company with me as the only shareholder. And I think that's where the adoption starts first, is individuals adopting Bitcoin as their primary store of value, which comes after studying and then building their conviction. I don't recommend people who don't understand Bitcoin go and allocate heavily to it. But if you're an individual and you're running a private entity and in your personal life you've solved the problem of store of value for the long term, then naturally the next step is to solve the problem for your business. And just to, I suppose, introduce myself and give you a little bit of when Matt started for us, Scott Ellam, companies XCE, Connecting Excellence, and we're a group that are preparing for IPO. Within that group is an operating business called Spencer Riley. So it's if you can imagine a typical service-based, people-driven business where the growth of the business and the results of the business come down to the individuals in the company. So in 2021, we decided to use Bitcoin as our primary reserve asset. And since then, it's allowed us to motivate staff and it's allowed us to have a longer view into the future. And I think that's what it provides for private companies. We're obviously moving into the public side of it. And like you say, yes, people are interested in share price. And if a company is holding its cash reserves in cash, or if it's holding cash reserves, you're looking at them and you're knowing that they're making a decision to
lose money every year.
Exactly. So, we're looking forward to going forward into that. And don't see why every business on the planet at some stage in the future will start to allocate.
Yeah, and I think the more it becomes obvious that cash is the only investment that's a guaranteed loss, becomes a reality in people's minds, then they're going to have to migrate to something other than a guaranteed loss. Sean, you've been in the industry for a while now, getting involved in quite a few different aspects of it. What's your take on the rise of the Bitcoin treasury companies?
So first off, I think it's a great way to gain value, but I think you have to do it with your eyes open. And I think just buying and holding is one way to do it. But I think I come from a banking background, and you always have to think, how do you make yield and how do you get to protect your asset? How do you hedge the risks? And what we do as a business is very simply kind of providing crypto-friendly accounts as a platform. So we address the debanking theme that I think a lot of people have suffered in this room. I was intrigued to see the hands raised. But I think more broadly, and we focus on the lending side. So how do you get access as a business, if you hold Bitcoin, to loans against that? On our platform, we try to facilitate very cheap loans, but give people options. And eventually, as a platform business, you need to grow into having a principal position. And naturally, as we facilitated mostly loans against Bitcoin, that principal position for us is Bitcoin. But we're looking at this as a way to grow our platform. So I think I would say the first wave of Bitcoin treasury companies was more the buy and hold variety, and that has its place. But our theory on this is that for us to go into this space, we want to do it in a way that we get yield, we look at leverage, and we also think of picks and shovels business that correlates highly to the asset. So it's not just the asset, it's using that inherently in the business to scale.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things for me that Bitcoin treasury companies need to really, really focus on to differentiate themselves, because there's loads now, right? There was one, then there was a Japanese one, now there's 4 million. So what are you going to do to try and steal a market share on everybody else? And I think that has to be, how do you make more Bitcoin without then having to raise more money? And creating a profitable business is such an overlooked part of that. And I think the market sometimes overlooks the operating business value, because they're all focused on a company's MNAV, which for you who don't know, it's what is your company worth versus what your Bitcoin's worth. And often the business that actually is the profitable business that was the original part of the business, like Scott's executive search company, that sometimes is just disregarded, and it's all down to like, what's the Bitcoin worth? So I think there needs to be a clear direction of how do we tell the market that no, we're not just Bitcoin. We've got another company that creates a load of money that buys more Bitcoin. That's what our value should be on. And a nice segue into HODL, because that's their bag.
Eager to get involved there. Nice to meet everyone, and thanks for putting this event on, Jordan and the Bitcoin Collective. I'm David. So my background is from a Bitcoin exchange, from CoinCorner. I'm the CFO there, and I have been for the last nearly 8 years. And we looked at this space very interestingly and thought, actually, how could we get involved and what could we do there, and how would we go about it? So CoinCorner kind of specializes in terms of being very simple. Like, we've seen a lot of people talk about the EMI products for businesses today, and we're there to try and make Bitcoin accessible and easy, so that businesses can easily get involved. Like our EMI accounts, for instance, are they're free. They take literally moments to open up, and it gives you access to Bitcoin, and it is that easy. Now, it can be the same with a treasury company. You can make it as simple as possible, and our methodology would be, how can you make Bitcoin work for you all the time? Now, you can make Bitcoin yield in a way that's secure and actually helps the Bitcoin network. So we looked at this and thought, actually, if you had access to that capital, where would you deploy it? And Lightning became an obvious choice, because the Lightning network, for all your fast transactions as merchants, focusing on businesses here, if you're in a shop, you need that layer 2 Lightning network to conduct a very fast transaction. So actually, and the Lightning network needs capital. So then, and that need for capital does bring yield. So you can actually have your Bitcoin being accretive within the Lightning network as a treasury company, deployed safely and securely, and earning a yield for you. So our approach is actually, okay, let's raise as much capital as possible to buy as much Bitcoin as possible, but actually get that working and working hard. And then at the end of it, every month, we can actually say, okay, we've earned this amount of Bitcoin without any further dilution, and that'll continue happening. It's happening right now with our deployment. So every minute of the day, every second, we are earning yield on Bitcoin, which will go back into the treasury company. And then the metric that we're all looking at is literally sats per share, so the Satoshi per share, and that will always go up with that methodology. So I think that's a different approach for a treasury company, and one that might be seen as how to approach it in the future.
I completely agree. And I think what you've done that's really, really smart is accrete Bitcoin even when you can't raise capital. Because at the minute, it's a nightmare to try and raise funds because everyone's, under probably 1M level there or thereabouts. So raising money isn't really a viable option at that point. So how do you carry on creating Bitcoin in your sleep effectively, right?
It's exactly that. We work with Alan Farrington, who is very well known for the saying, where's the yield come from? And but once you think about it and how Bitcoin works in the financial sector, like if we're going to build a strong base layer on Bitcoin, then actually yield in this sort of manner, there's a lot of opportunities out there basically to earn this yield.
Totally. And I think every company that launches into this space needs to think of, how do we earn Bitcoin in our sleep while we can't raise capital from the market because it's not looking like a friendly space.
Yeah, but that's exactly it. It's also how like building a business is impossibly hard, and you make targets for yourself at every opportunity. So like Scott's mentioning, like building that team around you and in terms of those Bitcoin advocates is so important. So that's at HODL, that's why we focus on like Freddie New. I'm a very poor, apologies that Freddie couldn't be here today, but I'm a very poor substitute for him. But in terms of that CEO, we've got Danny Scott, who's been running the CoinCorner for forever and is massively into Bitcoin advocate through and through. And Alan, as I've mentioned, but if you build that team and focus on Bitcoin and what Bitcoin can do, like almost the yield follows, the progression of Bitcoin comes with it. So it's a great space to be in at the moment.
Yeah.
The world is changing fast, and your business is no exception. How you save, plan, and protect your future is shifting, and standing still now means falling behind. This is the reason we are launching the UK's first Bitcoin business network, and it exists to help UK businesses protect what they've built and turn Bitcoin into a genuine competitive advantage. It's a place for founders, entrepreneurs, and executives to share what's working, learn from people actually doing it, and help drive positive change across the UK. So if you were a business owner or an entrepreneur, hit the link down below to join the network and help shape the future of Bitcoin in the UK. Okay, let's get back to the video.
Scott, let's delve into yours a bit more, because I love the idea that you're just going to try and take over another industry with Bitcoin in your backpack.
Yeah, I'm going to give the other side of the view for traditional businesses who maybe don't have as deeper understanding of the Lightning Network and yield on the Lightning Network. And right now, when preparing for an IPO, we have plans and options post that event. But if you look at it right now and you say, okay, how can you use the Bitcoin in your traditional business? We've built Bitcoin balance sheet over 4 years with an average purchase price of 37,500.
It'll be that next week.
Long term as well, yeah.
That'll be the price next week.
Long term, we've proved the thesis that over 4 years, if you buy price agnostically, you're up. Now, that, funnily enough, just small anecdote, last week we had a fee come in. So we do 70% of our revenue from overseas, USA, Europe, Middle East, and we place senior level individuals. Fee came in $96,600, and I joked to the chairman, I said, that nearly buys a full Bitcoin, and then this week it buys more. And that's the point. The business is uncorrelated to Bitcoin in its revenues. So when we started in 2021 allocating to Bitcoin, the Bitcoin price drew down 80%. Our business revenues doubled in that time. So we were able to accumulate more Bitcoin, and we're denominating that balance sheet in Bitcoin. How much Bitcoin do we own? Not how many pounds do we own? So there's that area, but then from a point of view of using it, we want to, yes, we will use and we will can't say will use, we will consider and we will consider
Where's your compliance
developing, convertible bonds and the other things that you've seen in the Bitcoin Treasury space to leverage equities and leverage debt to increase Bitcoin per share. But human capital and the people network, we'll be using the public status to allow us to become a talent attraction vehicle. So the hardest thing to do when you're growing an executive search firm is, how do I attract the competitors' highest billers who are billing 500 grand to £1 million a year? How do I get them to join this business? Well, we all pay a similar basic salary, which is usually low in our industry compared to most industries, because everybody earns high commission and earns probably disproportionately a little bit more than other industries. So it's protected on the downside. But how do we attract them people? Well, now we can leverage the share options and say, okay, if you've previously billed £500,000 a year and you do investment banking, you can come in here and plug in, because we're sector agnostic, regional agnostic. And provided you do the £500,000 over the next 12 months, you will earn some share options over that period. And then share options year 3, year 7, and just attract people to a business to drive revenues and cash flows to buy more Bitcoin, regardless of the sentiment in the marketplace. And ideally and logically, that would also protect our MNAV in that we've got a growing revenue generating cash flowing business that can buy Bitcoin whether the market's in peak or lower sentiment. So yeah, I think you can use it in other ways that traditional businesses will find as they go forward.
Yeah, and I think a meritocracy based business like yours is a perfect vehicle to do it with, because if you just had a load of people on a basic salary, nobody really gives a shit, right? They just come there, they turn up, they do the job, they go home. But if you've got a sales environment where people have to do as much as they can to earn shares, and they're already sales dogs anyway, that's only going to push your profit margins up and only going to make you buy more Bitcoin.
Yeah, it makes sense. And one of them's in the room today, actually, Jonathan, who's
pressure, Jonathan.
Recently been retained on another aspect is we're plugging into the Bitcoin network from a point of view of, if you're a traditional executive and you've got a passion for Bitcoin, then you really do want to work in the industry. So we're going to build that confidential bridge for people to move out of them roles and into Bitcoin roles. And Jonathan Russell is retained on a chief investment officer role and a vice president role for a Bitcoin investment fund. So by being a business that's sector uncorrelated to Bitcoin in its core and synergistic from a point of view of attracting people and building a people network, we're also plugging into the Bitcoin network because that's where I suppose my passion is. Not everybody in the office is necessarily a Bitcoin maximalist, don't get me wrong, Jonathan. Yes. But just being able to create that environment where you say, we've been there, we've done it, we know what a Bitcoiner looks like who's a chief investment officer. I think over the next 5 to 10 years, you'll see the FTSE 100 eventually. You'll start seeing them implement Bitcoin strategies. And we just want to build a business that's there for everyone around the world to say, we'd like to use you.
Yeah. And just touching on the 5 to 10 year sort of time frame you just mentioned, Sean, when you look at the Bitcoin treasury companies, do you think, well, are they going to actually just carry on buying forever? Or is there like an end goal? Because most businesses have to submit sort of a business plan, or this is our 5 to 10 year goals. You know, are those goals just to acquire more Bitcoin, or is it we're going to acquire more Bitcoin to do something else, but then we'll come away from the Bitcoin?
A really good question. I think it's fascinating to hear the other business models that are emerging in this space. I think the first wave, or Bitcoin Treasury 1.0, was that buy and hold, more or less. And maybe MicroStrategy had some leverage baked in, but what we're seeing now with, say, Lightning or kind of core integrations to the business model is the 2.0. And I think what we're doing is we're kind of actively considering an IPO ourselves. I can't say exactly kind of any more detail on that, but we're very much keen to find a way to get a yield using our own business. And that would be to borrow against Bitcoin at, say, 3%, and then deploy the proceeds of that loan into private credit solutions like SME invoice financing, yielding us 10+%. So we're getting effectively a net interest margin on Bitcoin with some downside risk protection. But to your point as to what the future holds, I think the 3.0 is going to be the really interesting space. And I'm trying to get my head around kind of when you do get the yield and you get the picks and shovels business that works with the Bitcoin and integrally, what do you do next? And I think for a business like us, I'm fascinated by stablecoins and seeing how those have kind of been the killer app to get digital into the traditional world, in addition to Bitcoin, really. And we haven't yet seen proper yield-bearing stablecoins. And I think to move the market away from traditional banks, which I think, to be frank, are the biggest systemic risk we have in traditional financial services, because there's an implicit guarantee from the state, and fractional reserve lending means you're lending money you don't have. And if the state's guaranteeing that, like, Bitcoin is the hedge that the world has against these systemic risks. Yeah. And I think the less money we have in fractional reserve lending and more we have in digital and decentralized, we'll need eventually solutions that can give yield. And if cash is yield bearing that we use every day, and it could be Bitcoin denominated, I mean, there's a very easy way to do that. People will choose on their feet to move towards that. So I think the crystal ball, if I may, 5-10 years, it's still a lot to build, but I think that's where I would place my bets.
Yeah. David, you guys have already launched, you're already live, you're creating yield already. In terms of a time frame of where do you have like a 5-year plan, a 10-year plan? And I know Freddie well. Freddie is clearly a Bitcoin purist, probably say we'll just carry on growing it forever. But is there a sense amongst your team of like, where are we going to get this to?
There is a plan in terms of aggressively accumulating. We did put enough working capital aside for 4 years so that we were mitigated against any downside. Beyond that, we're hoping to work almost with the Bitcoin ecosystem. It's like, where will that be in 10 years' time? I'm hoping it's the dominant currency globally. It will need a payments network, which is why we're, in terms of Lightning, so that's why we're focused on that. That Lightning does need liquidity, so with that is a focus for us. Beyond that, holding Bitcoin will be such a valuable thing for any business, and it will give any business that freedom. I think we'll move away from treasury companies per se, and like most businesses will be essentially treasury companies because they will all have to hold Bitcoin.
We've got 1 minute left. I just want to quickly touch on, so there was a bit of a talk a while back that maybe Microsoft or Meta or something like that was going to buy Bitcoin for their balance sheet. When do you think some absolute behemoth of a Mag 7, other than Tesla, because Elon's already in there with that, when do one of those guys do it? And if they do it, what does the cascading effect then look like? Quick fire round. Who goes first?
We work with the likes of, these are not Mag 7, and I think Tesla have already got Bitcoin on the balance sheet, and I don't know whether they're including the Mag 7 off the top of my head, but they're up there as a world famous, everybody's portfolio business in traditional investing. I don't know whether it's in their interest to do so, and I don't know whether they're pressured not to, but I think you'll see it within the next 5 years. I think it usually takes longer than you expect. I was going to say, we work with businesses that you'll recognise, like your KPMGs and stuff, and there's one individual in each of them going around conferences usually and having
Like a virus within.
Yeah. And I just to David's point about Bitcoin adoption and every business becoming a Bitcoin treasury company in some respects, in that they hold Bitcoin. You'll see the smaller businesses adopt it first, then you'll see the larger private businesses, and then you'll see the PLCs begin adopting it more and more, and it'll probably get into the FTSE and the S&P and the NASDAQ and the Mag 7 last. We're speaking to private businesses. Jordan's doing a lot of work that are adopting it fast. The difficulty when you look at a board and you look at the decision making you have to go through, it's gonna take time.
Yeah. Don't ask Scott to do quick fire.
Yeah.
Sorry.
We're now 20 minutes over,
Yeah.
but good answer.
From an exchange point of view, I can tell you Scott is actually right in terms of the demographic we're seeing in businesses. So whilst initially 3 or 4 years ago, so lots of small companies, sole traders, where you have one decision maker, they would adopt Bitcoin because it's easy for them to do it, and there isn't much differentiation between the corporate and the individual at that point. And what you're seeing now is bigger businesses get involved. We're seeing it on the exchange. It's a big growth sector.
Yeah. Sean, last word, man of wisdom.
Very, very briefly, I think AI is going to be the reason these companies come into digital. And I think if you have an AI agent working for you, say Microsoft's going to bring these online, they're not going to open bank accounts. They're going to have
They need a wallet.
wallets. And if they're going to have wallets and they're going to be setting up these agents, guess what? They're going to have Bitcoin on their balance sheet. So I think it's going to happen sooner rather than later.
Yeah, good. Hopefully they will. Thank you very much. We're now, I don't even know what the clock's doing, but we're definitely over. But thank you very much. If you've got any questions, grab one of the guys afterwards. They're all doing great things in the treasury space.
Thank you.